Okay, so I recently picked up the brand new 15-inch MacBook Air from Apple, and I was super excited to actually check this thing out. Going into it, I knew this thing was gonna be thin and light, but while unboxing it, I was still caught off guard because I was impressed. This is the cheapest baseline M2 MacBook Air that you can buy from Apple right now, and it's about $1,300 USD. I was super excited to check this thing out, but now after about a few weeks worth of usage, I'm wondering, did I make a mistake? Is this even a good computer? What specs should I get? Did I choose the right color? And is this the right computer for you? I'm gonna be sharing my real world experience using this thing on the go with me, and make sure you guys watch till the end because I have some thoughts. Now, if you're debating if that extra screen real estate really matters that much, oh, it matters. If you're somebody who spends a lot of time working on your laptop, whether it's video work, photography work, design work, coding, school work, or even just consuming content on your laptop, you're gonna want that bigger screen. I remember when I was in university, I pretty much just used my laptop for everything. I don't know if you guys still do that, but even TV shows, movies, everything, I would just rather watch on the laptop if there's nobody else watching with me, because just going downstairs, turning on the TV, it's too much of a hassle. So if you're anything like that or have any of those use cases, then you're definitely going to appreciate that larger screen. So let's quickly talk about the build quality, because that's the first thing that really stood out at me. In typical Apple fashion, they knocked it out of the park. A nice and large spaced out trackpad in this fanless design and a 6-speaker sound array system. It feels really nice to hold, and honestly deceivingly light when you consider the size of it. I feel like I'm throwing around pizza dough, and if you're wondering if it makes a difference in day-to-day usage, yes it does. It was a noticeable difference between my 16-inch MacBook Pro and the 15-inch MacBook Air. It was noticeably lighter to pack up and carry around, lighter to work around with around the house, take it to coffee shops, just whatever I wanted to do. The overall experience was more pleasing. It just makes using this laptop a really good experience overall. Okay, now in terms of color, I was pretty adamant, even more than I probably should have been, in picking up this particular color because it's just so different. I'm kind of getting bored of the usual space gray and silver colors on the MacBooks, and the other color that they offered was like Starlight. It's got this golden brown hue to it, but honestly in some lighting it just looks silver to me. So this was the only color option in my opinion that looked different enough. But it doesn't come without its flaws, and you've probably already heard the internet complain about it. It's the fingerprints, and yes, that is an issue with this color. You'll notice the fingerprints right away. Literally the second I unboxed this thing, it was plastered. But honestly, in my opinion, it's a small price to pay for this beautiful midnight color, and I'm still sticking with it. As for the speakers on this are fantastic. You get the 6 speakers compared to the 4 on the 13-inch Air, even though they're not as good as the 16-inch MacBook Pro speakers, and I think that largely has to do with the placement of the speakers, because the speakers are kind of embedded below the keyboard, so it sounds a little more tinny or muffled compared to the free-flowing MacBook Pros that just has the speakers on the side. But overall, fantastic speakers, one of the best speakers, especially considering the size and thinness of this laptop. You also get MagSafe charging again with the color matching cable, which I love, by the way. This thing frees up another port so that you can basically charge while still having 2 extra USB-C ports on here. I also like that they decided to include this 35-watt charger from Apple, and I really like this because it's got 2 USB-C ports on it, which is something that we don't even get with the MacBook Pros. This is one of my favorite chargers. It's got the retractable pins as well, so when you're traveling with it, it really does feel like you're traveling with a MacBook Air. Overall, the computer is just very nice to use. Even though this is technically Apple's entry level going forward, it feels very similar, and in some instances even better than its older, more expensive brothers. Okay, so with all this talk about carrying this laptop around, let's say you want to carry this thing, but you don't want to carry a huge backpack, and it just kind of defeats the purpose of having such a small laptop, which is why I'm happy to bring to you guys the sponsor of today's video, Tomtoc. These guys make some really high quality products, and I think I have just the perfect laptop bag for you guys. This is the A42 laptop bag, and it comes with a well-organized storage system. It's got a main compartment, 2 sealed pockets, and a back pocket. Now, what I like about this particular bag is that you can can carry just the bare essentials of the laptop, maybe your iPad and the charger and SSD and stuff like that without having to carry like a full-out backpack or anything like that. So this gives me a nice compact case to take around, and everything still stays nice and organized and secure. Speaking of which, this bag also offers great protection with this soft cushioned fleece padding, water-resistant fabric, and corner armor in all four corners. Tomtak claims is military standard drop test approved. You have this removable shoulder strap as well here with YKK zippers, which are the industry standard. And if you have other laptops, no issues, because this will fit a wide array of standard laptop sizes. It even fits my 16-inch MacBook Pro. Now, if this looks like something you might be interested in, then I'll have it linked down below in the description. Make sure you guys go ahead and give them some love. Okay, now to talk about the juicy part, the specs. Look, I'm an Apple fanboy and I pretty much have all of their products, but I have a qualm with Apple, and I've been bringing this up again and again over the past year, and I was really hoping and praying that because this is a larger sized laptop that they would remedy this here, but we're still back here again. And I gotta mention, this is the baseline M2 MacBook Air 15-inch. So if you went and bought the cheapest model right now, this is what you would get. And the baseline model comes with 256 gigabytes of storage. Nope, don't like that. It's 2023. The OS itself already takes up about 25 gigs. So essentially all you're getting is about 225 gigs of storage. And honestly, it's just not enough. If you just install like one game on here, then boom, you're already out. Now, you can make an argument that if you can get more storage for cheaper, like by buying an SSD and attaching it, but what's the point of that? The whole reason you're getting this MacBook Air is for the portability and convenience factor. And there's absolutely nothing convenient about plugging in an SSD all of the time wherever you take this machine. Now you couple that with the fact that the 256 gigabyte version still uses that single SSD module versus the two smaller ones on the upgraded versions, which results in the SSD being quite a bit slower than the rest of the lineup. Just too many downsides with this baseline version. So that being said, you need to get at least 512 gigabytes storage, but that does increase the price another 200 bucks to 1500 bucks, which isn't cheap. Okay, next up, 8 gigabyte RAM. Similar to 256 gigabytes, 8 gigs is really starting to be a little bit too low again for the starting average. Nowadays, software and even websites are starting to use much more memory. Even opening up multiple Chrome tabs is going to do a number on your computer. So at this point, I really feel instead of upgrading processors year after year from M1 to M2 and spending so much R&D on all of that stuff, I mean, M1 was already super capable. I think Apple really needs to start upgrading their baseline models to 512 gigs and 8 gigabyte RAM. Okay, but specs and all of that aside, let's talk about performance. So how does this actually translate into real world performance? On that side of things, I'm happy to report that we've seen time and time again that Apple, even with lesser specs, is able to pull off incredibly great performance, largely thanks to their optimizations. And we have kind of the same story here again with the M2 chip, which is actually amazing. It blows my mind how good these chips have gotten. I'm able to edit 4K content faster, quieter, with no fan, and all while running on battery power, not even plugged in. Which I love that Macs don't throttle when I unplug the charger. So I get the same power when I'm on the go and unplugged than I do when I'm stationed at my desk and plugged in. Now in regards to plugging in, the battery life on this thing, amazing. I was actually able to get through a full day of light usage and even multiple days when I was using it basically on and off, which really makes this one of the perfect travel computers or computers for pretty much the everyday average user. Now aside from battery life and all of that stuff, overall in terms of performance, this thing is pretty much identical to the 13-inch MacBook Air. You get the M2 chip with no options for Pro, Max, or Ultra versions, and honestly, I don't think this computer even needs it. Now, if your job entails something like daily video editing like myself, or heavy usage of your computer, then yeah, I would recommend looking upwards at the 14-inch or 16-inch Pro models, so you can squeeze out that sustained Pro performance. But honestly, if you're working with like, social media footage and you're making content for like Instagram and YouTube and basic stuff, then you're gonna be fine with this computer. In fact, I was actually using this to edit my 4K videos and didn't really have too many hiccups. Yes, I did notice that it hangs a little bit more and I get those beach balls a little bit more, and the wait times are a little bit longer for rendering and all of that stuff compared to my much more powerful 16-inch M1 Max MacBook Pro, but Could I get away with this with occasional usage? 100%. And in that regard, literally the only thing holding this thing back from consistent prolonged usage is the fanless design, because the M2 chip is already super capable. As expected, under heavy load and sustained usage, this thing will start to throttle a bit. So things like video editing or long rendering, even gaming, anything that basically lights up all the cores for a while, that's where this computer will actually get really tested. It also does tend to get a little bit warm, and you can feel it on your lap if you're using it. Okay, so now we've discussed specs, performance, build, and all that stuff. I want to kind of bring everything together and conclude with you my thoughts on this computer and my experience actually using this laptop. The Air is already the best-selling laptop from Apple, and this just perfects that lineup. And I would absolutely love to say that this laptop is a no-brainer. However, I have some hesitancies, namely the price to specs ratio that I had brought up earlier in this review. At 256 gigabytes, you're getting approximately a 50% slower SSD compared to the 512 gigabyte version. Not to mention, it's also going to fill up in pretty much days after you bring it home. So now let's say you upgrade to 512 gigabytes, you're looking at about $1,500. Next, you want to upgrade the RAM, let's say. The memory in today's day and age is going to fill up very quickly, and when it does, it's going to spill over to the SSD. And when that happens, you'll actually notice the machine gets slower. That's not an experience that you want from a $1,500 laptop that you just bought. So just to future-proof it, you're probably going to want to get at least 16 gigs of RAM, at which point now this laptop costs $1,700, which makes the value prop for this laptop a little bit tougher to swallow. And if you go anything beyond that in terms of upgrades, you're pretty much in MacBook Pro 14-inch territory, and that computer is going to be much more powerful with a much nicer screen, more ports, and an SD card slot. So here's my thoughts on this whole dilemma. If you're someone who needs performance, honestly, I would just push you towards the 14-inch MacBook Pro. Honestly, over time, it's gonna be worth it for you because you're gonna get the performance that you need and you'll be able to grow with it as well. You're kind of future-proofing yourself. However, if you don't need that kind of performance, and this is where my views on the 13-inch MacBook Air and this 15-inch version differ significantly. You see, when it came to the 13-inch M2 MacBook Air, when I made the video on that, I was of the opinion that it would be better to go with the M1 MacBook Air because they were just so similar. But in this case, there's no other larger size MacBook that Apple makes that's not a Pro model. So I mean, all things considered, in order to get the bigger screen along with this beautiful design, lightweight body, super thin profile, this is pretty much your only bet. And that's why I think this is going to become Apple's best-selling MacBook. And I have no issues recommending this laptop. Yeah, in any case, if you like this video, then YouTube really thinks you're gonna like this one, or you might wanna check out this one here. And I'll see you guys there.